My name's Mike Rooth. I'm a comic book artist. You might know me from some of the comics I've drawn or the covers I've drawn, like The Last Ronin or Ninja Turtles or Gargoyles or things from your childhood. Speaking of your childhood, I'm here to tell you that your childhood was trash unless you watched Thundarr the Barbarian.
Honestly, when I think back to when I first watched it, when it first aired, so that would have been 1980, 1981, and then I believe they played the reruns up in Canada in 1983, and it was a special time. I can't really explain why. I was 5 or 6 years old at the time, but it was like Saturday mornings were a ritual with my older brother and I. He was 3 years older than me, and a little bit cooler than me as a result. And
obviously,
Star Wars was pretty fresh. You know what I mean? Like Star Wars was only a few years old, and we were nuts for it. And I'm just a little kid, so it's Spider-Man and it's Star Wars for me. And anyway, Thundarr the Barbarian, like 7:30 in the morning, because we were up early, eating our cereal, and I remember there was like a Hanna-Barbera hour. It actually wasn't part of the Hanna-Barbera universe officially, but it would sometimes get played in that chunk of shows. It would sometimes play in the Shanes, and later you'd get like Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends, followed by the Hulk. And it was just an amazing time. 1981 to 1983 is like my favorite time in the universe. Like it's the best. I would return there if I could instantly. But something about that show was cool because the show had elements of sci-fi, elements of fantasy. I don't know why, but I loved that sword and sorcery kind of stuff. From an early age, I think I saw like Conan books and Conan comics and Savage Sword magazines at a young age that my uncles or friends might have had when I was very young. And Frank Frazetta paintings and things like that I would see in flea markets and things like that I would just always gravitate. So something about Thundarr obviously hit that trigger early when I was young, and it was cool because like I said, Star Wars was fresh. So Thundarr is this barbarian character that predates He-Man, but he has this scabbard that he carries around, and the scabbard is a sun sword that only he can use. And the sun sword is basically a lightsaber, except that it's a little bit different in that it can be used as a blunt force weapon. It can cut through anything. It can it can't be commanded by anyone else. Although you later find out that it actually can be. There's like a special episode that explains why Thundarr is able to use it. There was 2 seasons of the show, and I couldn't get enough. It covered a lot of stuff. I think even the opening intro was just such an amazing 30 seconds of television, every week, for me anyway. And, it's this imagined world that's 2,000 years after the destruction of mankind in 1994. So it takes place in 3994. Earth's been underwater for 2,000 years, and what's left is just the remnants of the the previous man, which just happens to line up with the 1980s, which is where I was. So there's 1980s things that have been buried under the ice and the water for 2,000 years. Anyway, it's just there were some cool elements. My favorite character of all time is well, not of all time, but my favorite character from that show, which weirdly kind of set a precedent for other favorite characters of mine, was Ookla the Mock, who's his sidekick, who's like the Chewbacca kind of the show again, going back to that kind of Star Wars space swords and wizards and big goony henchmen, servant brother type characters, buddy type characters. And the artwork was sensational. It just left an imprint. I remember the teacher in the second grade asking me what I wanted to be when I grew up, and I said Ookla the Mock, and then I had to explain what that was. Something about big orange monsters always kind of clung to the situation. So yeah.
So do you think Star Wars had an influence on the creation of Thundarr?
Sorry, do you say what? I think so. Yeah, I think to a degree. I think there was just sort of it was such a fresh thing, but it wasn't fresh in terms of like, fiction and literature and books, but it was in terms of what was visual and what was on TV. You had this blue laser sword that looked an awful lot like a lightsaber, only it had a scabbard. it was Conan the Barbarian was really about to drop. You know what I mean? The movie, the original one, which is my favorite movie of all time. So there's a lot of things that for me were just kind of crowding in. And I didn't see that one until I was a bit older. I think I was probably 8 or 9 by the time I saw, that on an early beta or VHS tape or something like this.
Betamax.
But
talking about
Betamax,
dead
Betamax tape or something like that. Yeah, in the late 80s. But yeah, so I don't know. There was just there was an enthusiasm about the show that I think just sparked for my brother and I. We would go out and cosplay Thundarr the Barbarian out in the park with sticks, you know what I mean? And it was just, it was just a neat moment because it was just this little 2-year thing when I was a kid. And then, of course, that was before the internet existed. And then so like decades later, suddenly I'm like, fuck, I wonder if I can find.
No, you can swear.
Yeah,
okay.
You can swear. Don't worry.
Some Thundarr the Barbarian. I wonder if that was just like a fever dream or something that I actually used to love. So, yeah. So, anyway, that was probably a very long answer to your first question. But
no, that's fine. That's perfect. No,
it's funny you say like pre-internet, and then the internet came along, and you started like kind of
you
doing
can
a little
look back
deep dive and
go,
stuff.
Yeah.
Did I was I weirdly on shrooms? Did I dream all of that?
Well,
because
I'll tell you, like along those lines, there's another cartoon from that era that really, like, I actually thought I had imagined. And it's because none of my friends knew it existed. And I kept on saying all the time, like, you guys saw this show. I didn't imagine this show. And what it was a Flintstones special where it was the Flintstones for the first, 15 minutes. And then it was like Fred and Barney meet Ben Grimm. And it was Fred and Barney meet the Thing, and it was the Thing in his first solo cartoon, away from the Fantastic Four cartoon from the '60s. Only this cartoon was super weird because it was like a Scooby-Doo kind of esque show where it was like teenage Ben Grimm, who's like this red-haired geeky kid who's like this total, he's just a total loser, can't get anything done, can't do anything right, but he's got these 2 magical rings, and he's literally like, thing, ring, do your things, and he punches the rings together. Yes. Transforms into Ben Grimm. But the crazy thing is, the kid is just like this doofus kid. He transforms into the Thing, and when the Thing arrives, he's like a whole different entity. He's like a different person, and like it's the Thing now inhabiting this boy's.
Shit.
It's very weird. So it was like Shazam. It was like
Shazam.
It was.
But you saying,
yeah,
the thing ring. That just popped the nostalgia in my head. I saw that. Did. I remember that. Now that you said that, I remember that. Oh my god!
As a kid, I lost my mind. I lost my mind for this show, and they were only 8-minute episodes. There was only 1 season. That was after the Flintstone special, and I remember just going crazy when the show came on because I just loved the Thing. Partly because I was just getting into comics then, and I was just reading my uncle's comics, and he always had Marvel 2-in-1, which was always the Thing teamed up with somebody else, which is still my favorite comic book, So the Thing, another orange monster like Ookla the Mock, it had a grip on me or something like that, and I love that show. Anyway, years and years later, I'm at a convention and I'm talking to some kid at my table. I'm there drawing at a show, and a kid comes up and we're talking about Ben Grimm, and I mentioned, I'm like, yeah, there was this cartoon that I don't know if it really existed because for 25 years I've been telling my friends and none of them have any idea what I'm talking about. And I described this cartoon, and the kid was like, I got to look it up. And he looked it up on the internet, and didn't he find this grainy, terrible 30-second clip of Ben Grimm meets Fred and Barney. And it's
I'm literally looking at it.
Yeah, and since then, I've been able to find them all since then, and actually get decent copies that I've been able to watch. But man, I literally thought it didn't exist. I thought I imagined it. I thought I had created some happy place in my childhood where I went and hid and had this cartoon that I generated out of. You know what I mean?
I mean,
no shit. Yeah.
Totally.
We can put it back.
I did that when the internet started becoming like a real force. I would go online and I would Google just like 80s cartoons and go through 200 plus cartoons that came out in the 80s and just kicking those memories back in and be like, do you remember, I think it was a Hanna-Barbera show, but The Impossibles, do you remember that?
The Impossibles.
It was 3 musicians. They're pretty much the Beatles, and they were superheroes. Like one of them turned into like springs. One of them turned into like water. and then I forget
and
what the other one was, but just random stuff like that. That like you said, Thundarr was 2 seasons. That's it.
yeah,
But it made a
But it
huge
wasn't-
lasting impact on your life. Like it's amazing these things that we consume.
well, and here's
that-
the thing, like, you're
I see
absolutely
what you
right,
mean there.
and like it makes an impact on your life, but then when it makes an even bigger impact on your life later when you look back, because as I discovered about Thundarr the Barbarian in my later life, as more information came out, I was able to get my own DVD copy of it and rewatch them all again. I looked up, how it was made. Like, what was the story with Ruby Spears? What was their deal? Like, I was a bunch of former Hanna-Barbera guys that kind of broke off and did their own thing and made some really cool shows. And one of the chief designers of the show, the guy who came up with the main characters and the concept, was Alex Toth, who's like one of the greatest comic creators of all time. And as it turns out, Jack Kirby, the greatest of all time.
Oh wow.
Was the guy who designed
impressive.
all of the bad guys, and actually ended up designing a lot of the show and a lot of the show elements and sets of the show, because Alex Toth was able to start the show and then he had to leave kind of shortly after starting. So Kirby stepped in. That's why the bad guys were so bananas and weird. It's because it was Jack Kirby, but I had no idea. Now, obviously, I'm a lifelong Jack Kirby guy. My favorite comic was, Fantastic Four and Marvel 2-in-1 and the Hulk and things like this that were all Jack Kirby. And then to find out later that my favorite cartoon as a kid actually was pretty much came out of his head.
Yeah. So there's something there. You deep down
So
inside, you
it's
probably
like
knew it.
Yeah. There was a ribbon there, a thread. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah, that's pretty cool that you like gravitated to it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, Thundarr was a very interesting show. Always, like it wasn't 2 seasons of anything else like the 80s, which was like 65 episodes. Like Thundercats was 2 seasons, but it was like 100 something episodes or something ridiculous like that.
Yeah, it's true.
Everything was forever. But yeah, like I looked it up and I was like, there was only 20 episodes, but it lasted, a normal 2 years, and it came out before I was born, like realistically.
Yep.
But because of Saturday morning cartoons, they just played reruns of like everything at all hours of the day, right? Like I would wake up at like 5 a.m. and just sit there watching TV cartoons like forever, right? And that's how I turned it on. I remember seeing Thundarr for the first time, thinking this is the weirdest episode of He-Man I've ever seen.
Well,
realizing it was then a different cartoon, because at that time, like I was like 5 or 6, so that was like the late 80s, and He-Man was a thing already. So like I had seen He-Man, but I ran into Thundarr, and I was like a weird.
And that's
I was like, this is the most bizarre thing.
I think if He-Man hadn't come out and buried Thundarr, there might have been more Thundarr. It's hard to say. It's almost like He-Man and Filmation came out with all this toy money backing, all this idea to like sell this product. I don't think there was ever plans for Thundarr toys. They made them later, like retroactively, but there was never any Thundarr action figures at the time or any kind of Thundarr product outside of the cartoon. And I mean, maybe because maybe it just only seemed to, gravitate towards weird kids like me at the time. Maybe it didn't catch on in the way that, Care Bears and stuff or something that I hope would catch on from that era. But He-Man came in like a tidal wave and just basically washed Thundarr, back to 1994 or whatever. But you know what I mean? And I was a big He-Man kid too. I loved He-Man, so like at least we had He-Man, which was even bigger and more colorful, and then there was toys. Like it was, it was easy to forget about Thundarr, but I never did. I just we didn't have any way to watch it up in Canada. Not until many, many years later when, bootleg. You might see a bootleg VHS, but my first time seeing them again was probably about 10 years ago. My wife bought what she thought was a legit Thundarr DVD, and it looked legit. It looked like it came from the Thundarr store, like it was like a nice packaging.
Yeah.
As soon as I fired it in, like, the little Teletoon logo on the bottom of the screen, or the, whatever. Cartoon Network or whatever thing. So whatever. I didn't care. I got to watch them all again. I didn't mind.
Teletoon. Yeah. I'm not going to lie. Teletoon alone was like I'm like, oh, I've definitely seen a lot of Teletoon stuff. Definitely. Probably. I watched it on the internet. I definitely did not download that. Yeah. But no, that was Canada's Cartoon Network.
Yeah,
I think a lot of it
A lot.
too was like we had an obsession with barbarians in the early 80s. Now so Conan, rated R movie, but definitely geared towards kids, right? Thundarr, He-Man, Black Star.
Probably throw Cull in there.
Yep.
Cull. And then what I originally thought Thundarr was before I looked this up before doing this episode, I used to watch the Herculoids a lot.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So for some reason in my mind, I was like, Thundarr is part of the Herculoids.
And Mighty Mightor, that guy, he looks like a character from Thundarr as well. Yeah. Thundarr was just so different. It had such weird stuff. Like it had to use old stuff from the past and like find a new way to repurpose it. Like there's an episode later in the season where there's the bad guy, the wizard. It's always a wizard who's figured out some way to animate.
It's a different color wizard dealing with different creatures
pretty much
that are humanoids.
And in this one, they hijack a full-size aircraft carrier, but instead of missiles, they somehow able to move this thing across the water. But instead of missiles, it's shooting sharpened logs out of its pan. So it's just so like over the top crazy, But
it really was. But the sci-fi that was the blend.
Yeah.
There was the blend of that sci-fi cheese-tastic cartoon that, if you look back at some of the Star Wars stuff, probably could have, especially the animated stuff, it was all super cheesy back then too.
Yeah.
And a lot of the cartoons were, no matter how you sliced it, like we can't debate that. Like we love them. They weren't like cinematic masterpieces in most cases, but
there was
I was gonna say, but it was a weird blend of sci-fi and almost like somebody making some weird stuff up in a D&D campaign. But like you said, it's like it takes place in the future, and every once in a while they stumble across like rubble of like what existed what they believe would have existed when the Earth like had an apocalypse, and then they're like, all right, so this dude, he's another creature. He barely speaks English, and he's gonna be your BFF. You're a barbarian, so you're definitely out of place with the, sorceress lady. And then don't worry about being chased by, trains or planes or motorcycles or whatever. Like, but you're gonna act like a dumb barbarian. And it was interesting. Like I said, it was like the craziest episode of He-Man I ever watched.
And it was interesting too. Like it was, it had the same limitations that cartoons had back then in terms of age appropriateness stuff. Like so, there's one of my favorite scenes, which really sets the pace for the entire show, is the first episode. They're in they stumble upon some old amusement park, and there's these soldiers that they end up battling. These this kind of army of these misfit soldiers, and they all, if I'm not mistaken, they're all like basically like tin soldiers, like from like like a merry-go-round type kind of Sure. And at one point, Thundarr jumps down and he's got his sun sword out and he's kind of just mostly defending himself, like pushing them back with the light, with the sun sword. And at one point, there's a mistake where one kind of lunges at him and he ends up cutting it. And as he cuts through it, he realizes that all these sparks and, gears and stuff start flying out of it. And he suddenly like has this bright look on his face and he just shouts at Ookla. He goes, "Ookla, they're machines." And Ookla now can just let loose. And he just starts tearing heads off and throwing these things by the legs and tearing them apart. And it's just like we went berserk as kids because, like, they weren't limited. They weren't killing anybody. There was no blood. There was no violence. They're smashing robots. Yeah. And so they did it with a total abandon. And, what was amazing about the show, too, which, again, you look back at having been educated in art and working as an illustrator all these years, looking back and seeing how the show was made, like that show was using rotoscope and all that stuff that you end up seeing Ralph Bakshi using and stuff like the Lord of the Rings film, the animated one and He-Man. Filmation did so much rotoscoping, which made those, made some of those scenes realistic looking, the horseback riding scenes and stuff like that. Thundarr did amazing shit on that show. Like they did a classic like horse chase kind of scene where Thundarr jumps off his horse and tackles another dude off of his horse. They had to rotoscope that whole thing. Like that's just a crazy amount of labor, and it looks so good. Like it was just a little detail, but it looked so authentic and made the show. I don't know. It's just a special show that way.
Yeah, there's definitely a charm in those old shows like that. You know, I've said it before. I have trouble getting into newer cartoons. You know, even whether it's a serious cartoon or like a silly cartoon, it's hard to get into it because the animation is just it's so digital and lifeless now.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, where back in the day, you know, like you look at, like you said, the rotoscoping with, you know, He-Man, even, you know, like Transformers or anything like that back then, any, you know, Rankin Bass stuff, it's all blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah, you know, there's emotion in it.
Like, my gosh, they're incredible. Those realistically painted backgrounds that really made you feel like you're traveling huge distances. And they pulled off some cool shit. Like I even think about like, you know, G.I. Joe and Transformers, like you said, like in the 80s, man, look at the work that went into the background. I mean, you can freeze frame some pretty goofy stuff on that show sometimes. And how they but just the way they actually painted the scene and put you in that place, like unbelievable. Thundarr did the same thing. You know, it was a broken version of Earth. You know, it was kind of awesome that way. But there was some really like over the top, like a wizard finds out how to animate the Statue of Liberty and turns it into like a King Kong monster. You know, it just. But you know, for a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, that's magical stuff. You know, that's.
I mean, hey,
realistically,
if Ghostbusters can do it, and we all loved it, like.
Oh, exactly. Yeah.
Obviously, Thundarr did it first, so I call shenanigans on Ghostbusters' part for copying them.
That's it. It's copyright infringement. Jack Kirby, get on that.
A small lawsuit. Creative.
It's funny, you know, like once in a while I'll be at a convention and I'll do a panel or something like that, and someone in the audience will ask, like, you know, what comic book property would you like to work on if you were given a chance to kind of pick one to work on? And I always say it's, you know, I don't know if there ever was a decent or existing Thundarr the Barbarian comic. The internet would probably answer that for us, but I'd love to have my hands on that property and play with that. I love the simplicity of the characters and just there's so much potential in that world. Because it's just our world. It's just our world, you know, and, you know, it's just a little bit broken. You know, there's no way to fuel the helicopter, but they get it up in the air somehow. You know what I mean? Buchla figures out how to fly it, and he's basically Chewbacca, right? So maybe there's an innate ability with Chewbacca-like characters to flying ships. I don't know.
Obviously, because that's how they had to get here and other things. I could barely speak. I could barely communicate with you, so I'll just fly. You don't really need to talk to me on that. Like, we're cool, right? Right. I did look it up now when you talked about the comic stuff, and it looks like there was some old Whitman comics that they put out.
That's interesting. I'll have to look that up in myself and see. Yeah.
There's a picture of a Thor in Thundarr, but I'm pretty sure it's a fake.
There's lots of cool fan art. There was an amazing fan art piece from a few years ago that was like it looked like kind of a noir, not really a noir, but like a really dark fantasy kind of version of like if you look up Thundarr the Barbarian movie poster, it'll probably show up. And it looked like a pretty interesting updated look at the Thundarr characters, but done in like a really nice looking poster. Actually, I thought, shit, if this is real, I'd watch that. That looks great.
I'd watch it.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Is it like the lifelike one?
Yeah, it's kind of got a bit of a darker vibe to it, though.
Yeah.
I recall.
Yeah. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah,
I'd watch that. I mean, like, let's be clear. When we found out we were talking about Thundarr, I started watching a couple episodes.
Nice.
And I was like, yeah, no, this show's hitting it right now. But no, it is. There was lots of good things about it. Mm-hmm. All the bad things aside, right? Like,
there are some bad.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of bad things about it.
It was the 80s.
Everything we've talked about, there's definitely bad things about it for the most part, right?
Cringy stuff. There's a bit of cringy stuff there. There's a lot of like like totally ridiculous misogyny in some of the dealings with with with
right,
Arrow.
because obviously,
kind of like, whoa, you couldn't do that in a cartoon now. You couldn't actually say that. Anytime
I think
Ariel
you could.
brags about like her childhood or doing something awesome, like, yeah, me and the girls used to do this stuff, and Ukla will be on his weird looking horse behind everybody. He'll be giggling to himself like, a girl bragging about things, ha ha ha, he said in his grunts, but like a kid, he could even figure out what he was thinking. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Right. I'm pretty sure Thundarr would have said that out loud, because I don't think that
Thundarr
dude
would have.
That's right. He's
Thundarr would totally have said that out loud. But you're a girl. That's the stuff he.
I think I heard him say that multiple times in the episodes I watched, and I'm like, yeah, that didn't age super well for like today's age, but
yeah.
But
hey man, like there's a lot of stuff from that era that's much worse. But
there is.
But it is what it is. It's
No, that's it. Is like, so for every. But that's really kind of what it is all of these shows that we keep talking about and we'll talk about for the rest of our lives, because we're always gonna remember something weird that nobody else does. Like you brought up, Flintstones and Meet Ben Grimm, and it's like the Thing ring was the thing that triggered it for me, and I was like, yeah, no, memory unlocked apparently. It took this long. But they all led to something else, right? Like because somebody had to trip and fall and make some mistakes, and then somebody else learned from those mistakes. Sometimes they improve on it. Sometimes, like Mike has said, and I think I've said too, like the new stuff is like sometimes it's just straight weird. But it's catering to a different audience.
Yeah.
Every once in a while, you'll get the new thing, cartoon wise or show wise or whatever, where it kind of plays into our memories and our stuff. Like is what we would like.
Yeah.
And every once in a while, I mean, it still fails, right? Like I think. Like we've talked about a number of times the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movies that came out with the Michael Bay ones.
Yeah.
They were movies.
Yeah, they're movies. You missed it entirely, but yeah.
Yeah, they were movies that were entertaining. I don't think they weren't great Turtles movies, but I have watched them multiple times. I will probably watch them multiple times again, because I can disassociate and be like, this isn't my Turtles, but this is a Turtles, and this appealed to people.
Yeah.
Okay, great. It's not what I want, but I can understand it.
That's especially something as long lived and as multi-generational as Turtles. Like, I mean, you guys are New Hampshire guys. You ever been to the Granite State Comic Con?
I was there last year. I spent a lot of time in that room.
It's an awesome place. That was the best show I've ever had. That was my first time doing my show last year. And I actually won the Granite State Championship belt, the sketch-off championship. I defeated Ben Bishop
nice.
and the other Turtles guys in the sketch battle. I actually have to go down there this year to defend it. Be
there you go. Because a lot of them are coming back.
They are.
I missed the sketch-off because I was waiting in line for a certain... Kevin.
It was ridiculous. But what I was just going to say with the Turtles, though, and that idea of, there's whole generations of Turtles releases that just completely were like, whoop, like not for me. But that's okay, because when I first read the Turtles, I was an 8-year-old kid with a black and white comic in my hand. And that's, honestly, that was me. Like, that was my first experience. And then we had the first edition, the colored graphic novels that were done, the graphic novel size ones.
Yep.
Those were a smash in my life. All my buddies were X-Men guys and Spider-Man guys, and I was this Turtles dude. And but to be at that show, like the New Hampshire show there, in Manchester, like having Turtles fans as young as 10 who love that Michael Bay stuff or love that 2013, that 2013 era stuff or that 2003 era stuff or whatever videotape they have in their VCR, you know what I mean? Whatever one they're binging. And I had, fans as old as 75.
Yeah.
You know, who were adults buying the first Turtles comics, and it just put a grip on them, you know.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful thing. Like I love
is.
that. So
I mean, and that's the thing too, is, everybody has their own
Yep.
generation one, right? The thing that got them into it. And it might not be my version of Turtles, the Michael Bay stuff, or like the 2017 cartoon. I wasn't a big fan of that, but you know what? It's bringing new audience, new fans. It's keeping the property alive, which gives us more versions, more iterations, and one of those iterations might come full circle and entertain us the way the old Mirage comics did, or for like me, like the cartoon, even though that was nothing like the Mirage comics.
See, for me, I was crazy about the role-playing game that came out in 1986. That was the old Dyson, the Palladium role-playing game. That was the only other source material that existed outside of the comic books, because it predated the first cartoon in 87. But the crazy thing about that cartoon was, when that hit Canada in 1988, I was I would have been about 13, 14. My younger brother was like 8 years old and just getting lit up about the Turtles. So I got to enjoy that first televised Turtles generation, the films and that show with him, and really got to have that amazing enriched experience, all the action figures, all that cool shit that came out. And then, then I was an adult, and then there was another one for another batch of kids, and another batch of kids 10 years later, 8 years later, 5 years later, and on it went. It's incredible. I've never seen anything like the love. The Turtles fandom especially is really a unique kind of energy. I've been doing the comic book thing for like 25 years, doing comic conventions and that stuff. And man, like the Turtles thing, once I kind of locked into the Turtles thing, that became a whole other monster unto itself. Yeah.
A couple of weeks ago, we took my 5-year-old daughter to see Mutant Mayhem. She absolutely loved it, and I did too. It's not the Turtles that I'm never gonna get the Turtles I want. I've come to terms with that, right? Because the 1991 movie is still perfection in my eyes. I want 10 more of those, but I know I never will, because The Secret of the Ooze was a step down, and then the third one was a big step down, and a huge part of that is because of the loss of Jim Henson. So we'll never get the quality of the first movie ever again. But this new take on it, the Mutant Mayhem, it was really good and entertaining, and she absolutely loved it. We had to go out and buy all the figures. She had birthday money left over.
Yeah, she had to.
That's the important thing, man. That's it. Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I've been told it's a much younger audience geared towards them. But there's so many things about it. When I heard Seth Rogen was doing a Turtles movie, I originally thought I heard it was going to be more of a closer to the original gritty retelling. And then as we got closer and I saw that first trailer, I was like, oh, that's a curveball I wasn't expecting.
Yeah.
But you know what? It's maybe not for me. I'm going to eventually see it. I didn't get up to the theater to see it yet, but
it's worth a watch. But you gotta, sure. Seth Rogen he's pretty good at what he does, right? Like he's the driving force between the Invincible cartoon. That's unbelievable. Yeah. That's
unbelievable. Yeah.
Great cartoon, and so what he did with this, it's definitely a family movie. It's definitely a coming of age retelling of the Turtles, but it works, in my opinion. Because everything you do, anytime you do something new, you can't do the Turtles from the 80s, right? Because we don't live in that time. There's technologies, there's the internet, there's cell phones, there's TV. So it's, you got to translate that to a modern time and change things up, you know what I mean? Like Donatello is a tinkerer and all that stuff. So obviously in this, it makes sense that he's, if they got like an iPad or something like that, because why wouldn't they have gone to the surface and stolen one and hacked onto someone's Wi-Fi or whatever,
Right, yeah.
So like I think he did a good job with modernizing it and making it for today's youth. It was pretty good. I was happy with that. I would not be upset if there was another one. And even like the animation's a little weird, right? Because they're doing the whole like, Into the Spider-Verse or Across the Spider-Verse type mashup, and it's jarring. I'm not gonna lie. I found myself a little like out of it and confused a couple times, just trying to focus on certain aspects. But as a whole, it was refreshing, right? It was. Because it didn't feel like the same old copy-paste animation that we get in a lot of things nowadays.
Right.
So, I think it was true.
I think
So,
you go.
I was gonna say, before we get too far along, you wanted to do something special with this episode, and you were gonna do a live drawing for us
Yeah,
and
I can do a
everyone
drawing. Sure, man.
to enjoy.
Yeah. Let me just switch over my camera and my microphone.
I started going down this rabbit hole now of Thundarr the Barbarian, and I'm like questioning whether or not the Whitman comics are real. So I'll have to look this up now.
Yeah.
We'll make them real.
You know what? If they do exist, I'm gonna say they're probably not amazing, and it's only because I don't know. I feel like something like that. Someone definitely ham-fisted that. You know, when they had their hands on it, they got too greedy. They didn't know what they had. It was like Michael Bay. Like one day, Michael Bay is going to get his hands on the Thundercats, and it's going to be a terrible day for everyone. You know.
Please don't.
But,
I mean, at this point,
Nick and I have talked about that plenty of times, right? If you're looking to be entertained, go watch a Michael Bay movie, right? Transformers.
Well, yeah, for sure.
Ninja Turtles, but like, you know, if you're talking about beloved properties that's been spanning 30 years, you know,
yeah,
get your fucking hands off them, please.
This is right. Yeah, this is it. Okay, hold on. Let me make sure.
I think that's the thing, and then at that point, is Megan Fox Tigra or Chitara? Like, I don't know.
No, she's Tigra with she's got the whip.
Despite all the issues they have consistently, he keeps putting her in things.
Yeah, right.
You know.
They hate each other, but he keeps on hiring her. Okay.
Yeah,
I don't get that.
You know, it's okay. The reality is, it's fine.
So you're tapping into a secret love of mine right now, Mike. I have an obsession with watching people draw.
Oh, cool!
It's actually a shared obsession.
Yes, I will sit for. I'll like be scrolling on Reels or whatever on Instagram, and all of a sudden like I come across someone that's drawing, and I will sit there and realize it's been like a half hour, and I've just been mesmerized by it. I love doing it. I follow Jim Lee because he does like live drawings.
Oh yeah, for sure.
On occasion, for like he'll just sit there for like 2-3 hours just drawing, and I'm always amazed. Like I've said before to Nick, I used to draw when I was younger. I was decent at it.
Yeah.
But I look at what you guys do, and it just blows my mind. Like and a lot of it's the confidence. I never had that. So I'll watch you guys draw, and you're like, nah, I don't like the way that arm looks, and completely erase the arm. And I'm sitting here thinking, that's a perfect arm. What the hell are you doing? Like, if that was me, I would not want to touch that arm because I wouldn't want to screw it up. I'd be afraid that I couldn't recreate that lightning in a bottle.
I was having a moment earlier today. I just finished up my comic book Dodge, which is a comic book about a werebear commando battling evil Russians in 1985. It's very much a tribute to movies like Predator and Commando.
That sounds amazing.
And the Kickstarter's running for it right now. I mean, when this airs, it will already be over, but you can still go and check out the Kickstarter and you'll be able to follow up on updates because this is our fourth and final issue that we're kickstarting right now, and the idea is later in the year, possibly before by around this time this airs, we want to have another Kickstarter for the collected edition, which will be the full graphic novel version of all 4 issues slapped together into one nice volume. The comic book is kind of a prequel to one called Retcon that was written by Matt Nixon, who's the guy who wrote Dodge as well. And I've become a co-creator. I was originally just a guy, art for hire guy, and I became a co-creator on the project after the second issue because I had really, kind of brought a new voice and a new kind of thought about who the character was. He's a little bit different than who he was in Matt's book Retcon, which was a 4-issue image series in 2017. So anyway, that was a long ramble about that.
Not at all.
Literally our bread and butter, so don't worry.
But what was I was going somewhere about that comic book. Sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought. But
that's fine.
About watching artists draw and stuff like that. I'm with you. I spent a lot of time doing online drawing shows and stuff like that, and I did that during the pandemic when all the conventions ended, with the idea that it would kind of help bring some of the Comic-Con experience home to people.
and give them a chance to, you know, watch people draw and do it from the comfort of their own home while everyone was either locked indoors or whatever the situation was in your state or province or wherever you're at. So we ended up doing that, and one of the things that we did was a show called Things Are Getting Sketchy, which is actually the name of this book here.
Okay,
this was the thing I used to do on Saturday nights with my friends, my editor from Aftershock Comics and my former editor at Aftershock, Stefan Nilsson, my friend Justin Steves from Big Country Comics, who's a retailer I've done a lot of covers and cool pieces of artwork for. And we used to do this weekly show, and we would auction the artwork off, and it gave the artists a little bit of income to come in while waiting for the world to come back online. And anyway, we produced so much art over the course of 3 years of the pandemic that we ended up releasing these books. We decided to make the books blank cover so we could sketch on them and make them a cool collectible item for people. And the artwork that we produced on the show was like top level. And we had dudes from like all different stages of their career. We had 3D sculptors. We had Thomas Day. We had Santaluco, who's a big-time Turtles artist. Chris Vance, who's one of the guests who's coming this year to Granite State, along with myself. I got to draw a giant center spread of Jitsu from He-Man.
Oh, that's awesome.
You know, we would just pick different themed nights and basically do stuff. I'm sure we had a Thundarr night or something like 80s cartoon night. I've done lots of Last Ronin stuff.
Dinobots.
Transformers. So there's Kelly Williams doing the Transformers. I mean, that guy is just a genius. We had a Rick and Morty night. You know, we had, there's Jason Flowers, who's a favorite at Granite and stuff like that, I think, too. And He-Man night, this kind of stuff. So anyway, yeah, they're cool little collectibles. And I thought I would draw a quick Thundarr or a quick Ookla the Mock, since we were talking about how much I love that character.
Nice. That's pretty cool.
I like him because he's got that classic three-fingered Kirby hand, 3 fingers and a thumb. All that stuff that I would recognize as a Kirby thing, later. Just really cool stuff.
No,
nice.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I started talking about my comic book and got sidetracked. But yeah, the comic is called Dodge, and Kickstarter's running right now. And it's been a lot of fun. It's been a 5-year journey. Basically, the theme of the comic is sort of like a Hellboy meets G.I. Joe kind of vibe, where you have a special soldiers that battle supernatural threats. So, like for instance, in Retcon, they reference the Saddam, like the Middle Eastern War in the 90s, where they went looking for weapons of mass destruction, and what they found was actually that Saddam didn't have a bomb or a dirty weapon. He had a genie in a bottle that he could control. And so Dodge and his crew had to find a way to defeat Saddam Hussein with who had a genie, but like not like Aladdin style genie, like an actual Persian mythology original style genie, which is just a really cool looking monster. But anyway,
nice. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. I think you guys can dig the book.
Sounds like an interesting book.
Yeah, the pitch, the 30-second elevator pitch that Matt gave me when we first met on the project was, so he's a commando werebear who wears a Black Sabbath T-shirt and has an M60 machine gun, and they fight werewolves in Siberia during the Cold War. And I was like, all right, I'll draw that book. I'll draw that book for sure. So anyway, that's what happened. That's how it went down.
I mean, that's kind of my most recent, one of my 2 D&D campaigns that I've been a part of for the past year. I actually played a werebear. So
nice.
It was pitched to me. I was like, yeah, he's like, what it? I wanted to become a barbarian, which is like a cross between a druid and a barbarian. So basically, and the idea is basically you just kind of rage out, and after you transform, and you just go house, right?
Yep.
He's like, all right, what if you are also a werebear? And I was like,
yep.
Okay, done. So I was a werebear barbarian named Barry.
Amazing.
Yep. It was awesome.
Yeah,
you could just superpowers the werebear stare.
No, that would have been even better. But when we pick back up, I might have to actually bring that up and be like, all right, so what if during the time off I learned how to do something and I'll figure out how to, finagle it.
And then if you run out of ideas, you can do the werebear cousins.
Oh yeah, nah. So like our whole group ended up being were animals. Like I was like the party had like a were raven.
Amazing.
And I was like, I joined after all of them were a thing. So like I joined the campaign afterwards, and I was like, he didn't tell me that everybody was like werebears or were animals, and I was like, this is. All right, I can get into this. Like he didn't even tell them that I was a werebear at first. So I kind of kept it low key, and because I was a druid, I was like I could turn into a bear, and then so I would just but I like the werebear portion of it. Like I had figured out how to like my character had figured out how to like control his transformations.
That's awesome.
So he could kind of do it like not at will, but like in a control and like a couple times a day. So me turning into a bear and also being able to turn into a bear differently never really triggered on people for a while.
I love it, man.
Can I be a were fainting goat? But I can't control the transformation. It's when I get scared, I transform into the fainting goat, and I just poof transform and then faint in midair and then fall on the ground.
Yeah, that'd be cool. You can combine it with some kind of stone elemental power. You can just turn into like this fainting goat that just turns into this immensely heavy object that lands on people.
I was gonna say, like, if you like levitate first and then you basically just have like drop it like you just crushing damage because it's a goat falling on you.
It's it.
I feel like we figured it out, guys.
Yeah.
Good job.
I miss D&D, man. I haven't played D&D in any kind of real serious regularity since the second edition. But I played a barbarian character from about 1988 till probably 96 was the last time I played that character, and it was a long running character. It was awesome, and our DM was kind of cruel and not very generous with the experience points. He only gave us experience points for combat, so it took us forever to advance. But man, when we did, we really felt like we earned it, and those were the good old days. That was some fun stuff. But back then, we were very limited in what we could choose, but I would always choose a barbarian character. Again, probably because of Thundarr the Barbarian, Conan the Barbarian, like, the comics and the movie. Like, there was just a lot of that kind of thematic stuff in my life, I guess, yeah.
Did you ever actually play a barbarian named Thundarr? Because that's...
No, my barbarian was called Thorfinn Stormlord, and I played him for a very long time. I think I transitioned him into a couple. I think I tried him in Warhammer Fantasy as well. We had a bit of a Warhammer Fantasy campaign for a bit, and a couple other games probably.
Nice.
But yeah, good
now. Stuff. So we talked about a Thundarr comic.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out how to say this. How would you picture that being done? Like, first of all, like what company would put it out?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know. It's some companies know how to handle properties really, really well, and others don't. I think everyone's got good and bad track records when it comes to handling cartoon IP,
right?
And comic,
of course.
Yeah. Currently, right now, I'm very curious to see what Image is going to do with their Transformers and GI Joe. Now that they have that, they're doing that whole Energon universe imprint where they're going to have those two universes cross over, and it's Image doing it for the first time, and they're using their very, very top high tier people like. A big portion of the business I do is retailer exclusives and variant covers for shops, and a lot of them aren't doing doing retailer exclusives for that book because the Image has a very very short list of artists that you're allowed to choose from. So they can't even submit my name, for instance, to do a cover for one of those properties because they got a very, very tightly wound grip on it. But that said, IDW's done a great job with Turtles, and I think it's because they've hung on to some of the classic things that that the original creators intended, and they've been able to produce basically 8 different Turtles comics that kind of appeal to the 8 or 9 different Turtles generations out there, readers. And so something like Thundarr, though, I'd want to appeal to like the guys in my age group that probably love the show. I'm not sure how you'd win new audiences with Thundarr without updating it, or without, I don't know. I love it in its original form, so I would probably tackle it if I was drawing it myself. I would probably tackle it like from this, like a Conan the Barbarian comics standpoint, where it was more black and white, realistic style drawing. Maybe there's color. That might be nice, or really keep it closer to the cartoon, like the original cartoon in that style. Where I think someone like maybe Archie could do it. Maybe Titan Books, who's doing Conan right now. They could probably do a good job. Sorry, that was the company.
I thought so right off the bat when I thought of the question, I was like, I feel like IDW could do a good job because IDW put out a lot of like the 2000s, Transformers, G.I. Joe, stuff like that.
For sure.
And I really loved it, and they did a great job.
Yep.
It's not Image, it's not Marvel, it's not DC. So I think IDW could pull it off pretty well.
I think so.
Image could pull it off. I think Image would do a great job with it as well, but that's because I do enjoy me some Image comics.
Sure, yeah. I'm really waiting to see what they do with G.I. Joe and Transformers before I make the call, but I'm sure it's in the right hands, and I'm sure they're going to do amazing stuff with that. Like, I'm excited to pick those up when they come. I love that old G.I. Joe Larry Hama stuff, though, that picked up from the 80s and 90s comic book series, which was just so good. That was just such brilliant stuff,
the designs and the art back then were I don't know, like same thing, something charming about it, old 80s style and stuff. Like I've been on a kick where I'll go out, not crazy, but I'll go out and I'll look for like the old cartoon comic books, right? Like how they had Thundercats, Silverhawks, Mask, all like these 80s, and just I've been keeping an eye out Voltron for like just the number ones, from the 80s, and just like I'm gonna try and get a bunch of the number ones from when I was a kid. I'm not doing so good because apparently they're not as easy to get if you just randomly stumble in a comic store.
Oh, they're not
hunting. But I did find Mask issue number 1 and Silverhawks issue number 1. So He-Man issue number 1's a little pricey for me right now, so I had to pass on that.
Yeah. There's the Gargoyles came back as well. Dynamite's doing it. Dynamite would have been another company that I would suggest that would probably handle Thundarr well, because they're doing that Fire and Ice series, which is the based off the Frazetta Ralph Bakshi film, which was just incredible, like a real piece of artwork. It's a bit of a sleeper to get through now, to be honest with you. And I'm a Frazetta nut, but I find that to be a bit of a tiresomely long film sometimes. But I love every frame of it. Like, I love how beautiful it is. I love the character designs. And they're doing a comic version of that right now, which is kind of awesome.
Nice. That's cool.
And so I feel like they would. I got to do a Gargoyles cover as well, which was a lot of fun. I loved that show, and I loved being able to work with Ed Asner's gone, but like when they told me I could draw whatever I wanted for the cover, I had to draw Hudson because
my boy.
Because he's the best. Like, he was the best, like I remember just loving the show. Like, he's the only one of them that has a sword. He had like a real story, and like they're telling all kinds of cool like stories about Hudson as a young warrior and as a young gargoyle now. Like, and you can buy them in comic book form, and I feel like there's a real decent reverence being paid to the original material. And I always love when I see that happening. That doesn't happen all the time, so it's nice when it does.
When I saw that cover, I squealed a little bit because same thing. He's my favorite character, right? So NECA's got the toys out, and like literally, I only have 2 of them. I have Hudson, and who do you need when you get Hudson?
Yeah, this is it. They're so good.
Eating his dog.
Yeah. Oh, Gore. Yeah, you gotta have him. Yeah, you gotta have Brooklyn, man. Absolutely. Or Bronx, the Bronx.
Bronx.
Yeah. Yeah, he's awesome, man.
Yeah, same thing. You know that he's the old, you know, the Scottish, you know, war vet, and he was way more compelling. You know, he had a little bit of added armor and you know, the sword and stuff. It made him a little bit more appealing to me as a kid, and even transitioned as an adult. And that's a cartoon that holds up. Like I'll sit down and I'll throw on some episodes randomly, and I'm still wildly entertained by it.
It's so good, man. And my regret with Gargoyles was when it first aired, I was just moving out of my parents' house. I was like 18 years old, and I remember it just came on, and I was so stoked. I watched the first 2 episodes, and I was just like, "This is wicked!" Like a cartoon that kind of feels like it's growing up with me. Like it's you know, it's like it's not dumbed down. Like we had just gotten through like the first couple seasons of the Batman animated series, which was like definitely a cartoon that was more for, you know, older audiences. So this was really in that vein and had that feeling, that quality, and you know, of course, the amazing voice cast that the show had as well. Right. But I was just moving out of my parents' house, and when I moved out, I didn't have cable TV anymore, and so I went years never having able to watch it again. But that first few episodes got their hooks in me, and then I think it was probably around early 2000s, like maybe 2005, 2010, when I think I saw like a tape or I saw a clip of it in some way. But yeah, it had been since it originally aired before it got on Disney Plus, and I was able to watch them all again, you know.
Yeah, it's one of the few cartoons that holds up like tremendously. Yeah. That and Exo Squad still holds up.
It was Gargoyles was far ahead of its time.
Oh yeah,
that's really all it was. It was way ahead of its time. It got, because it wasn't more kid friendly, like it got a lot of flack back in the day, because it was going up against things that were obviously more child appropriate.
Yep.
But it was just a really well done show. And like you said, you brought up Dynamite, the comic company. That was the other one I had flicking in the back of my head. I was like, they're doing some really good stuff with like Gargoyles and Darkwing Duck. I think they could do something with Thundarr. There was this thinking about Thundarr reminded me of this, like there was this one Cartoon Network show called Korgoth of Barbaria. It literally lasted one episode. But it was during that time it was like mid 2000s when when everything they put out was like 15 minutes.
Right.
But it was, and the entire episode was him in a tavern. But then, and he like gets drunk or something like that, and he legit just takes his axe out and murders everybody. like you talked about the robots, like they're like, oh, they're robots, we could totally do this, and I'm like, Korgoth of Barbaria, it was like a one shot. It was like, I think it was meant to be a cartoon, but I think they really went for all the gusto right off the bat, and they were like, this is what we're doing, and everybody was like, that's a lot, dude. So they kind of like, it had the one episode that it aired. I was and somebody had uploaded it to YouTube at the time, and I found a way working at Best Buy to get around their firewall of not allowing internet. So I found a way to watch YouTube, but I definitely watched that a number of times while working at Best Buy.
That's amazing. I love that.
But it kind of goes to show, like we talked about, like back then it was like, oh, they're robots, we could definitely just kill all of these things, and it's totally cool with kid audiences. And then we go to the flip side where it's like, I got drunk and just murdered everybody.
I love that kind of thing.
Different aspect. But if they did do Thundarr, I would definitely not want Korgoth. I would want the feel of like, oh wait, these are robots. Oh, we could definitely just rip them apart.
Oh yeah.
I wouldn't want. I wouldn't. I don't think it would hold up as. I don't think it would be as well received if they didn't try to keep it in that same.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree, and I think that maybe is why, like, for me, like, I didn't love the Kevin Smith He-Man stuff, because I just like I was excited about it, and then it didn't like, I was kind of had in my head it was going to be very much like the old show, like it was going to be in walking in the same skin as that old show, and it really was a different thing. And I watched it. My wife suffered through it with me. She was like, "You're not going to make me watch the second part of this, are you?" You know, like she. I was kind of like jacked up about it just because, again, I was like a He-Man kid, and yeah, I agree. If I was going to see this, be reborn in some way, I'd want to keep it as traditional as I could, for sure. Yeah, it was just too awesome the way it was. It was a nice purity about it. It was, it was just, it had struck a chord with people. Like, I had a random request from a guy. I was at a comic convention a few weeks ago in Montreal, one of my favorite shows, and a dude had a very specific Thundarr the Barbarian like sketch request where he wanted, like, in the opening credits, there's one frame where there's this weird wizard with a helmet on, like a great helm on, and he's summoning this like green scaly creature from nothing, and it's just one frame where he just has his hands over his head and these lightning bolts make this creature appear, and that's it. And he brought me a freeze frame shot from the opening credits. Like, this is like 4 weeks ago, and was just like, "Here, can you draw this for me? Like, can you draw like a commission with this character?" And I was like, "Of course I can, because this is the coolest commission I've probably ever got." Because who are you showing up at my table with a friggin', a Thundarr the Barbarian request? But not only that, a super obscure one, like a really, really like out there, credit reel kind of reference thing, like just really crazy.
That's
but,
pretty cool.
Yeah.
I also feel like that's the same. No, and I go to enough conventions, and I do the same stuff. Just so we're clear, I am not calling anybody out on this. It's also the same type of person who would be at like a panel and be like, "So, Jack," in like obviously talking to Jack Kirby, because that's the only way it would ever work. What were you thinking when you created this one frame? And they would hold it up on like a print, like they'd get it printed out of like Staples or something like that, and they'd be like, "So what were you doing?" And Jack would, like, every panel I've ever been is like, "I have no idea."
Yeah.
I have no clue.
Yeah.
I don't even remember doing that.
Oh, that's yeah.
Not just so, like, like I've been to enough panels where they're like, you catch the person off guard and they're like, I've got nothing. That feels like that's exactly, like, I just, as you're describing it, I'm like, that's what played out in my head.
Oh yeah. Yeah, have that happen before, for sure. People bring stuff that I drew years and years and years ago to have it signed, or in weird cases, literal deadlines that I forgot that I had to like whip out. Sometimes you get a call on a Wednesday night that you have a cover due on a Friday morning, and you only got the Thursday to think about it, but you had 3 hours set aside on Thursday to go visit your doctor, and you had to take the train across to another town, and all of a sudden you got this cover that's due on Friday morning, and you can't say no because you're a hungry illustrator, and they've just given you this deadline. So you hammer it out, and you somehow work for 36 hours straight, and you crush this thing and hand it in on time. And then 10 years later, someone brings it to your table to sign it, and you have no memory that you ever did it. It's the weirdest thing, man. And it's happened more than once. I'm not going to lie. It's happened more than once to me, and it's strange for sure. Sometimes it's just work. Sometimes there's no, that's why it's nice to work on like a comic book or something like that I'm really passionate about, like something like the Dodge comic I just spent the last 5 years drawing. Like, when it's your own characters and you have to like, put them to bed each night and put them through their emotions and, dress them up in different costumes and, what I mean, all this type of stuff. Like it's pretty rad. It's a pretty cool thing. And that's the stuff that you can really put yourself into and remember and build and grow from. And then sometimes it's just work. It's just like,
man, I always forget to take pictures of sketches when I'm at shows. So I just always forget when I'm at a convention to take pictures. And yeah, sometimes I do stuff that I think that's probably a good thing. You know, probably a good thing that there's no record of these strange requests and really odd, things that have rolled through. But yeah.
Last year I was at GraniteCon. I was talking to somebody, and somebody had handed them the Stray Dogs comic, blank sketch cover, and wanted like a Bluey scene on it. And he was like, "This is the weirdest. I don't what." I was like, "I'm gonna do it, obviously, because they're paying me." But
yeah,
what? I was like, "Look, we have weird requests, man. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I got nothing, man."
Sometimes the requests are weird. That's very true. Sometimes it's just
but
like
they pay you.
Yeah, and sometimes they have to pay a lot if I'm going to cross that threshold for them, because sometimes sometimes the request is well, there's really only one outcome, for this. Probably a terrible choice of words, but there's really only one purpose for some of these requests that come in, and yeah.
They're adult in nature, probably.
Yes.
Yeah,
we have famously up here. We have we used to have a character that would go to these conventions, and he would always. Maybe have you heard of him with other people you've talked to? Everyone collectively in the comic business called him the glue guy, because he had this request where he always wanted you to draw characters that had glue on their body. Glue on their face, maybe it's glue on their feet, maybe it's someone stepping on glue, trying to capture that visceral quality of someone walking through glue or whatever. And, when they ask for glue on She-Hulk's face, they're not asking for glue on She-Hulk's face, you know what I mean? And so sometimes when people make requests like that, I'm always like, what's your request? You want this? Okay, yeah. What my rate? Well, my rate for that piece would be $9. You know what? Let's go $950. Oh, just for a sketch? Oh yeah. For a sketch, that's what it's going to cost.
Because you're weirding me out. There's definite add-on tax to that.
This is I gotta pay a freak tax. This is your like kink tax.
The freak fee.
I was trying to figure out the best way to put that. The freak tax is probably the best way to put that.
I don't want to give a bad name to freaks or whatever people are into. Whatever people are into, that's cool.
Yeah.
Their money's just as good as everybody else's, right? I think. I don't know. Maybe you don't want to touch it. I got nothing.
Yeah, it's like there was a lady that I did a drawing for once. She was just super into squids, and she wanted that to be illustrated in a particular way, and so I did, and she paid well because that's specifically what she wanted, and that's what she got, and sometimes they're just weird like that.
And you know what? That's okay, because everybody's allowed to. Hey, put it back. We're watching you draw, man. The reality is, we both have actively expressed in previous episodes that we have a massive affinity for watching people draw. Anyway, there's a whole you know what? Whatever you're into, as long as it's not harming anybody else, just do your thing, man. That's
I just have to, as long as I'm comfortable with it, that's it. There's one fellow that's making requests sometimes that I think his actual fetish is not so much the artwork that's produced, it's the idea that he's worked himself up enough nerve to actually ask a person to draw these things for him. I think for him that's actually where the kink lies, or where the actual where the buildup is released, so to speak. But I don't know. I don't know that it's the artwork itself. I think it's actually just the experience of knowing that you're going to pay someone to make this very specific kink of yours come to life on the page. I don't know, man. It's a strange whole other kind of. But illustration has always been prostitution. It's just a different kind of thing. Yeah. It really is. Like I've been working. How does my friend Tom Fowler say? I have been a private dancer for over 30 years. That's really what it is.
You know,
and apparently we just watched you do it on.
This is it. Yeah.
Our episode. I feel like the conversation just kind of took like a weird turn. Like I don't know if I'm
it's anyway. Yeah, you do get some cool requested shows though, like the guy who requested Thundarr the Barbarian material. That was a really cool, uplifting twist to my day in Montreal that time for sure. Yeah,
awesome. Yeah, like I sometimes like to just talk to artists and ask them like what the weirdest requests were. Like nobody told me about Glue Guy, so I thank you everybody who's not told me about him or whatever.
He might be a Canada. He might be a Canada thing. I think he changed his gimmick. He had that gimmick for a while. I think
you gotta switch it up then.
I think his new gimmick now is he wears luchador mask and gives out hugs. I think that's kind of his new gimmick at shows. You know, you got to find your thing, I guess. You know, and I guess
you got to switch it up when people catch on to you.
Yeah, you know, whatever they're gonna grab. I guess you got to be ready with that wave when that wave comes crashing down. So,
yep, exactly.
You got to be able to pivot, cook on your feet.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I really figured out that I love watching people draw art at the first Boston Comic Con I went to. Years and years ago. I watched this person draw like they drew Boba Fett.
Nice.
And then they drew somebody else. And by the time I was done watching them draw, I felt bad. I told them, I was like, I feel weird standing here watching you draw. They're like, nah, it happens all the time. And I was like, okay, cool. Because it was like the first time I went to like a real convention. Because back in that day, Granite Con was much, much smaller. So like,
sure, yeah.
Right. So I hadn't really like realized that stuff yet, and so yeah, I watched the dude draw Boba Fett for like a long period of time on multiple covers, and I think I have some pictures of me taking pictures of him taking pictures of the art, and I was like, it's like weird. Yeah, exactly. But no,
it in my head.
right, yeah. It was fine. It's difficult. Anyway, but yeah, no, it was like over an hour later or something, some ridiculous amount of time, and I was like, I'm okay with this, but you know, I did come here with tasks. I probably should go do those tasks.
I don't usually mind when people watch me draw, but the only time I do mind is, and I'm not terribly fast. Like I put this together fast, but this is a very simple character and a very, very simple approach. But like my usual work is much more like, I'll show you an example of what the newest cover of Dodge looks like, just to show you a comparison. When I'm drawing a character like a Hanna-Barbera level character, there's a lot less to think about. But when I'm working in my own style, this is the kind of stuff that I do here. This is what the cover for Dodge looks like.
That's slightly different.
Yeah, it's a little bit more, different kind of audience, right? But
there's some veins.
Different levels of detail, different levels of approach, and so when I'm drawing at a show, I don't mind if someone's hanging out and watching me draw, provided they're not the person who's commissioned me to do the work. Like if they say, "Hey, can you do me a quick Swamp Thing head or something like that?" Well, sure, I can do that while you sit and wait and we chat. That's not a problem. Yeah, but if you want me to draw you like a Supergirl or something like that on a sketch cover in full color, and you want like a really nice, multiple figures or something like this, well, then you get to come back in 2 hours when I'm almost done, and you can watch me finish it. But don't just stand there for 2 hours while I'm drawing, because I will start to shrivel under your gaze. You know what I mean? It's a little bit different, when the commissioner is the one standing there.
I think that's that's the expected behavior. Like asking people for some commissions before that, it's like, they're like, no, come back in a few hours. I'm like, that's cool. I didn't actually want to stand here for hours and watch you draw that. I'll go watch somebody else draw somebody else's stuff. That's
it. That's it. Yeah.
You don't want that, especially when they're like Nick and they're breathing over your shoulder, watching, drooling, like that creepy kid from Hey Arnold.
Yeah, that's it. Now, once in a while, I get people that loom at my table. They just they'll just come to my table and they'll just drop their bag and they'll just stand there for 2 hours, and I don't get any drawing done. I don't get anything done at all. They just stand there and they want to talk about the hip surgery they just had, or they want to go in great length about some other inane thing that I don't really, it has nothing to do with the Spider-Man I'm trying to draw for some guy who's picking it up in an hour, that kind of thing. Yeah, it's funny, but
we just want friends.
That's a warning.
This is it.
Really
yeah,
a warning.
I'm not talking about you if you're the guy listening. I'm not talking about you.
Yeah, not you. It's the other guy who's not listening.
That other looming guy that had hip surgery.
No, you go, Mike.
I was gonna say it's funny before you get too far off of this. It's funny that you say Granite Con has come so far, right? But it was one of the first ever Granite Cons, and Rob Paulson was there.
Yeah,
they started off strong, and they only went stronger.
They started off strong. It used to be, Mike. Now that you've been that Turtles room that existed last year.
Yes,
that was the whole thing.
Oh, the whole show was in there.
The whole show was in there at the very beginning for the first few years.
Oh wow!
And they expanded. And just so we're clear, the guys who run that show are all great people. I've known them for many, many years.
Yeah.
All amazing. So shout out to you guys. But no, it started off in that little room. That room was the whole convention. And the first one I went to, I ended up meeting one of the comics that got me back into comics when I was older in life was a comic book called Stuff of Legend.
Okay. Yep.
It's kind of like if Toy Story took place in World War II, and the toys were trying to actually save their owner from the boogeyman. But it's an amazing book. My biggest complaint about it is its size. It is a weird shape. So it's magazine size boards, but it only takes up 55% of the board height wise. So I can't even cut it in half. So I've got this magazine size bag, and the comic is this big in it, but the board's this big. It's but that's my biggest complaint. But it's such an amazing book, and I got to meet the artists that were there that time, and then I've gone back and I've found weird things promo posters for that comic book The Cape.
I remember.
They came from there, and a whole bunch of other interesting things, and so it was that whole it was much smaller, but it was such a blast, and I'm glad that it's expanded to what it is. And like Mike said, Rob Paulson's been there. Last year they had a number of people.
Yeah, but that was the first or second year, right? And not only was it was really early on.
It was early on,
but not only it was when they only had the small room, but not only was Rob Paulson there, but so was Jim Cummings. And that's the first one I went to, and I was just blown away by that stuff. You know what I mean? Especially voice actors, right? You talk to a voice actor in person, and they just, especially those guys, right? There's some voice actors that are just themselves, and then you have those voice actors that are just a little off, a little odd in the head. So they're talking to you, and then all of a sudden they just start doing their character voices, and then you just go back to an 8-year-old kid and just start giggling.
It's pretty cool, man. Yeah, it's cool when they turn out to be awesome people too. I've had mostly good experiences that way. That's pretty cool. Like Tom Cook's a guy that shows up at a lot of conventions. I'm not sure if he was at Granite last year, but he was actually an artist who worked on Thundarr the Barbarian, and he also worked on the Ben Grimm, like the Ben Grimm The Thing show or whatever it was called. Yeah. So I actually have a print that he signed of that, which again validated my 5-year-old fever dream that I sure. That somehow manifested into reality after the internet was born, you know. Because I swear to you, all through high school, all through growing up into my 20s and 30s, I would tell people about this show, and they would have no idea what I was talking about. And it was the most bizarre thing.
Sure, it existed. Okay, just like your girlfriend who lives in.
She goes to another school. I actually had it wasn't, you know, Flintstones thing, but I had my own cartoon that was in a similar boat. It was called Fluffy Dogs.
And
it was like a made over the years I've pieced it together. It was a made for TV movie that played on ABC, and it was dogs that had magical abilities from like another planet, and they like they're all colored, and like if you look at it you're like, oh, I could definitely see where Care Bears came from.
Oh yeah, sure.
Right. Or one of them copied the other. I forget the exact dates. I'd have to go back. Yeah. But anyway, that was my fever dream. Like, that didn't happen. Like, it didn't. It took many a year to figure out I was not crazy. I still know nobody who's ever actually seen it.
Never heard of it. And I heard of everything.
No, I know, right? Like, it's such a deep thing that like it's a Disney. Just so we're clear, it is Disney. It was put out on ABC on like remember The Wonderful World of Disney?
Oh yeah.
It was put out in there. Right, yeah. So it was put out on there. It was like the Sunday night movie one night, and I only remember watching it like a couple more times on the Disney Channel, and I swear I have a VHS tape with it on it somewhere in the house. But I have never actually found that. So that might be the fever dream thing. At least Fluffy Dogs exist.
Google says it does.
I know it does. I've seen it again. Because somebody uploaded the entire movie in 5 different parts to YouTube. So I just watched it.
Nice.
But yeah, no, that was my fever dream of.
That's awesome.
That didn't happen. No, it did. That's come to find out, my better half, probably the best way to put it. Her family has a lot of movies that are like that, and even they've never heard of it. But they have this other one that they keep talking about called The Last Electric Night. It's also a movie, I believe, called Sidekicks, but it's not the one with Jonathan Brandis and Chuck Norris. It's a different...
That doesn't exist.
Sidekicks, yeah, I remember that.
It doesn't exist.
No, you bet your ass it does. I begged my mom to go watch that in theaters, and she never took me.
Because it doesn't exist.
And it does. Don't even start. Anyway, so The Last Electric Night, it was like a made-for-TV movie that was supposed to kick off like a whole TV show. They changed I think the TV show was called Sidekicks. But it stars Keno as a kid. Jr.? Yeah, Ernie Reyes Jr. as a kid. And I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, how weird.
But that was like, we're talking about weird things that some people claim exists, and I'm like, look, like Mike said, he's got a deep bag of cartoons and stuff. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about, Fluffy Dogs.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
I've got a deep bag of I have a deep bag of movies and weird stuff that like people just I don't even know how I understand that that's a thing that existed. And I was told about The Last Electric Night, and I was like, that doesn't exist. You're telling me Kino was a kid ever? That's not a thing. But the fact that he did a martial arts movie for Disney, no way.
Yeah, that's kind of amazing.
I know it exists.
He did Surf Ninjas, so there's that.
Yeah, but that was him and Rob Schneider and a kid who played a Sega Game Gear
to defeat Leslie Nielsen.
Right.
So good.
Not to, yeah.
Those old movies are great. Like, have you ever seen the movie Space Truckers?
Space Truckers. Oh man, maybe.
No.
Wow, I'm not sure.
That's an old one. I think when did that come out? 96. It stars Dennis Hopper and Steven Dorff.
Oh shit, man! Yeah, I've got a weird memory of that. Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much they're literally Star Wars, and they're like truckers.
Yeah.
And they get their cargo stolen by pirates.
Made in the same sort as a Water World or something like that, probably.
Right? I mean, it's Dennis Hopper, so maybe that's what happened. Yeah. Then he crash lands into a flooded Earth, and then takes over. That's it. It's a prequel.
And then after the water goes down, that's when we get Dennis Hopper as Bowser. That's it. We figured it out.
Full circle. Yeah.
Full circle. Goes
because of all the water, it's just so much moisture that just fungus grew everywhere.
Yeah. And then later on, we end up with Thundarr and Ukla.
Yes.
Now we're back to Thundarr.
The Dennis Hopper trilogy. Amazing.
Oh man. Yeah, you'd have to have Dennis Hopper somehow in the Thundarr. Like you'd have to play the bad guy Gemini, who's got like the reversal head. Like
I could
head, and then the head rotates around, and it's like a different voice. After.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
Yeah.
I would buy that.
Yeah.
And we have enough great people to play all the weird wizards.
Oh, for sure.
And we could have John Hamm come back as any number of weird creatures in a mask, because he apparently likes to do that. Heck, we could get Kino in there. He could play a mutant turtle. Not a teenage mutant ninja one, but just a mutant turtle.
Yeah, just a mutant turtle. Or a turtle man.
Or whatever.
Yeah.
That's it.
All I know is I gotta go watch Space Truckers tomorrow or this weekend or something. I mean, that movie was so good.
Yeah.
So there's this one scene that always stuck out in my head, and it's the main pirate guy is like a half robot, and
so we can kill him and it's okay.
Yes, exactly. Only half of them. You can only kill half of them.
Okay.
They kidnap the girl that's like hanging out with these guys and stuff like that. And he's got her locked in his chambers, and he's going to have his way with her. And he's half robot, so he's like, all right. He's like, hold on a second. And then you just see him go like this, and it sounds like a chainsaw starting, like ring, ring. And then all of a sudden, it just kicks over, and you just hear a slight hum.
I don't like how any of that was described.
Yeah, that was. I kind of want to watch the movie now, just because that sounds.
Just to give you an idea of how that movie is, it's so good.
Wow.
I pulled up the cast. I'd like to point out it's got George Wendt in it.
Amazing.
So it's got Norm.
And what year did you say? Like 96 or something?
96, yeah. Debbie Mazur's in it.
Oh, weird.
Yeah.
All right, that's got to be explored then. That sounds bad enough that like I'm sure my wife.
Yes.
We have this like once in a while, like once a month, twice a month, we'll just like choose the worst film that we can imagine, and
it's always fun to
see
do.
if we can survive it. Yeah, it's the best. It's the best. There's an interesting energy that comes out of time constraints. Like
sometimes, like I said, you get these. My first Red Sonja Conan cover gig was for Dynamite, and it was a very short turnaround. And they wanted me to make it look like the Earl Norham, the artist who painted a lot of Conan covers, but he also did a lot of the packaging art for He-Man and Masters of the Universe. That really fleshy looking oil painting kind of style of
amazing art. Yeah,
really one of the best of all time. Anyway, they gave me like a really rushed deadline on that. Again, it might have been like a Wednesday night. Found out about it until Thursday, due Friday morning, and I channeled Earl Norham as hard as I could that weekend to try to get this thing done, and come up with a simple idea. They're fighting some Viking zombies or something like this on the cover, and I just hammered it out. And Earl Norham actually passed away that weekend. I think I actually channeled his energy too hard and summoned too much of his life force into my studio, and I think he may have succumbed to that. I'm not sure. I try not to think about it too much because he was so great and so underrated. He was really one of the all-time greats. But anyway,
for legal reasons, that didn't actually happen.
No.
Mike was in a different part of the place. He was
I was
nowhere
using
near
my
him.
sorcery to channel his talent with my paintbrush, and it didn't.
Mike, Ariel's not real.
But sometimes, there's a real the time constraints on a job can really give it a really unique flavor because you never know when you can stop. Knowing when to stop. I mean, even famously, Frank Frazetta, until he died, at his own museum where his paintings were hanging, they would do tours of his museum, and he'd be sitting there, and he'd walk over to it and be like, this bit always bothered me, and he'd grab a paintbrush and he'd start working, and everyone would be like, stop, Frank, you painted that 30 years ago, you got to stop. But it's oil paint. He's just adding another, another element to it that he always felt it needed, and it's kind of interesting. Some medium you can't really do that. I mean, and like I said, sometimes a deadline's a deadline, and I'll hand it in and I'll think, shit, I wish I could have added this little thing, or I could have. Now it lives in print for all eternity, and it will haunt me until I'm an old man. That weird drawing of a hand that I did, or that weird. Forgot to add that one detail to the character because I had to get it scanned and get it sent before 5 o'clock that day, kind of thing.
Right.
So there's always that stuff that goes missing, and then there's always the stuff that never gets a chance to appear there because you don't have the time to think about it before you hand it in. So,
then you think about it after. Yeah, you think about it afterwards. I just pulled up that cover that you're talking about. I like it a lot.
Which one?
But I can see exactly what you're talking about.
You're
like. With where you channeled them, I was like, nope, I can see that.
Yeah, I didn't have the time. If I'd had one more day, it would have been a little bit of a stronger cover. There were some things about it that didn't get double checked, so I had a rough sketch approved, and I had very little time to move on it, so I just started working on the rough sketch. And when I got time to actually doing the finished painting with the point of no return, there were elements of it that needed correction that I couldn't correct, so I had to just do it and stand behind it. So hope for another shot. Hope for another shot in the future. Do it again.
Basically, artists are like that meme where it's a cartoon of someone laying in bed wide awake, and the caption is me thinking about that stupid thing I said 10 years ago one time.
100%. Oh yeah. It's like I don't show off a lot of my sequential artwork, my interior pages of comics, because it doesn't matter how many I do or how long I've been doing this. People are going to see that when they get the finished product and they read the comic book. And my hope is when you're reading the comic book that some of the things that jump out at me, like an electric shock or like being struck with a frying pan in the forehead, will not hit people with that kind of severity. I hope that they'll glaze over some of those things that haunt me and keep me awake. Because it's like there's elements on the page that I love. Like, I love how that monster looks, or I have a transformation sequence, or a particular action sequence, or a really good hand sometimes is enough to make a page just an awesome page. But there'll be some.
Look, heads are hard.
They are.
So many people are like, I can't draw heads, and I've been doing this for decades, and I'm like, I can't draw people or anything, so whatever you draw is probably better than my best day.
Like drawing figures and drawing forms and creatures, that's stuff that's my playground. But when, like in Dodge, I had to draw a whole bunch of military equipment, which I didn't know I was going to have to draw. So then all of a sudden I had to learn how to draw all this military equipment, which I hate drawing that kind of stuff. I hate drawing tech stuff. I use a brush. So like going in and drawing AK-47s with any kind of accuracy using a paintbrush is, when you're trying to get a page done You know, it's
Yeah.
It's crazy.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Must be a pain in the ass to do.
There's just stuff you have to draw sometimes. It's just like, man, I have to draw that. And sometimes it's something simple, like, you know, drawing a character throwing another character through a wall might be easy, but drawing someone standing on the street corner waiting for a cab while they're talking on their cell phone, getting that body language and that spirit of that very mundane, simple activity can be a thing that really haunts me and keeps me up, and I just can't get that feeling right. It's a weird thing.
I'm great at action drawing. I can't draw standy. I can't draw people doing lame things.
Yeah, pretty much.
I only draw people doing awesome things.
I had to draw a guy putting his son into a car the other day, like lifting his son and putting him into a car. Like, what a terrible thing to have to draw. Like, put yourself there, man. You know?
Did you at least ask, like, could he throw his son in the car?
Well, this is it. No, he's gently pushing his son into a car, and it's kind of like, that's a good thing to draw. That's a tricky thing to draw, you know? I want to draw a dragon. Yeah. Can I draw a dragon instead? Like,
can I draw him petting a dragon? Can I draw him fighting a dragon?
It's funny the stuff we obsess over, right? Like my wife will give me crap, like if we'll like do renovations around the house or whatever, and I'll like fix like a wall, and I'll sit there and obsess over it for like 4 days. She'll be like, "Can I paint that damn wall yet?" I'm like, "No, I gotta fix that." She's like, "Fix what?" I'm like, "Right there." And she's like, "No one's gonna see it." I'm like, "But I'm gonna see it every time I walk by the damn wall." Like,
I would like to point out, I'm also the same way with Mike and the art he draws. He's like, "I gotta fix this thing." I was like, "Dude, I can't even tell what the difference between what you just sent me and what you sent me before. I don't know. You gotta tell me what you did. It was slightly askew."
Just trust me and go with the updated
I believe
one,
you.
okay?
I'm not gonna argue. You designed it. You created it. I'm gonna take it when you say it's done. I'm not gonna fight with you about it. I'm just gonna tell you I can't tell what you did. That's fine. It doesn't matter if you can. I can, and that's okay. I let you guys do the art. I let you guys do your creative thing. That is not my bag.
You just sometimes we just need to hear someone agree with us. Like, I think this is better, and then you go, you don't. Yeah, I literally can't see a difference, but yes, you're right.
Yeah.
No, that's like
the first one was shit.
Yeah, the first one sucked.
I knew it.
Look, I disagree with you, man. No, but that's it. Is like you guys, like you guys are talking about. It's the things you can see, but that's what makes you able to do what you can do, and I can't. Right? Like, I don't know. I'm looking at like I've looked at so much art, and I'm like, I got no idea. I mean, I could possibly do that by the time I die.
But the thing is with that is a lot of it is, you know, there's like the show Brain Games, or a lot of like the studies that people have done where your brain is wired to connect the dots, right? And if something is off, you might not be able to pick it out, but you know in the back of your head, right? And that's I think that's like an artist perspective of like, I gotta fix that. Sure, it looks good, and you know the common eye or the common reader is going to be like, this is great, but deep down in the back of their minds, they kind of know something's not.
You're gonna look at panel 4 on page 52 for the rest of your life.
This is it. I mean, and you know, when a person's reading a comic book, like depending on how wordy it is or whatever, they're really spending like 1.5 seconds on each frame. If you're lucky, they're spending that much time on that frame, but they don't know that drawing that you just did of the inside of an airplane hangar took you the better part of a week to figure out how to draw, and then it took you the better part of a week to ink that one frame that other panels with talking heads are going to be sitting on top of, but that one big backdrop splash page of the inside of that airplane hangar, which you had no idea how to draw before you read the script, and now you know how to draw it, and now you're half dead from drawing it. And it looks right enough that you're going to give it a pass to get onto the next page, but you hope and pray that the reader's still going to give that one big page, that cursory 1.5 second glance when they're reading the word bubbles, because if they fixate too long, they will find out that thing that kept you awake and still keeps you awake. You know,
let me break it to you guys. 22 though, right? Like you want them to glance over it to not see that, but then you also want them to look at the art and admire the work and and heart that you put into it.
Yeah.
So it's like that delicate balance.
It's a weird balance. I mean, my own criticism is of my interior work is I spend the storytelling gets lost in the detail that because most of my work is cover work. It's very high polished cover work that the idea is to sell a book. Storytelling, I feel like my storytelling, my frame to frame stuff is good, but sometimes I feel like it's over rendered, and it's because of this part of me that needs each frame to basically kind of stand out like its own cover, and that's
Sure.
not how you make comics. It's not how you make comics. But it's how I've made a bunch of comics, and it's it's one of those things you look back on, you go, man, this page only suffers from the sheer amount of extra effort it was given that it didn't need, that kind of
yeah. No, there's and
stuff.
that's where you're like, everybody's got to start off somewhere.
Yeah.
Right. Like, you're going to get better over time, and that's fine. And that's cool. Like, if you love it and you keep going, then you're going to get better no matter how much you want or how much you want, based off of how much you want that. So everybody's got to start somewhere. Yep. But yeah, no. I did that thing that everybody does. Like, I went, like, at that first convention, I was like looking at prices and I was like, I don't understand. Like, this doesn't make sense. And it took years before I started figuring out. I was like, oh no, I understand now. Because like, I can't draw. I'm not musically inclined. Like, I'm not artistic at all. My partner and her family, they're all massively artistic, like in their own special way, every single one of them. And I just look at half of what they do and I'm like, yeah, you suck. Like, that's it. I love you guys, but you're just way better at that stuff for me. I can do processes. I can see trends. I can pick that stuff out. I'm great. I'm good. I'm great with technology, and I can see those dots. And it was when I figured all that stuff out that I was like, oh, that's worth time. Then I was like, oh, now I get it. I get it now. And it made me a better, it made me a better person. Like, it made me appreciate comics and art and all that other stuff. I mean, personally, I look more than 1 second, but that's me.
People get weird ideas about the timing on things. Like, they'll see me draw a Spider-Man and maybe it takes me half an hour, and I put it out for auction online, and it starts getting bids, and by the time it's over, it's up to $300. And then people go, well, if I want to get a Spider-Man like that, what would it cost me to get one? And I'm like, well, I don't really do a lot of commissions, but if I was at a show, I'd probably do the same Spider-Man for like, $60, $80 at a show. And they're like, but you just did it in 15 minutes. That's a pretty good hourly rate. And I think, well, you might think so, but you're not paying for my minutes. You're not paying for my hours. You're paying for my years. You're paying for the fact that I'm 25 years
right.
After 25 years into this, I can draw you a painted full color half-hour Spider-Man, and for a decent price. That might seem like high.
No.
You're paying me an hourly wage, but you're not paying me an hourly wage. You're paying for a 15-minute experience or a half-hour experience of me. You get to walk away with something that no one else can have.
Yeah,
that's it. So
no, that's it. That's the trigger. Is right there. You just explain, like, that's what happened in my brain. It took me a minute to get there, and I apologize to anybody I like.
Oh no, that's totally
or whatever. No, like I look back and I'm like, I hope I wasn't kind of a jerk to people. Like, I try to like I may have just been like thinking about it, and I have an expression in face, so maybe my face said it sometimes. But like, the reality is, you're right. That's it. The cost is based off of your level of experience. Mm-hmm. You didn't take 30 minutes to figure it out. You took decades to figure it out, and that's worth that money, because even in those same decades, I probably still couldn't get to that same level. But, like, who knows? Maybe I could. I've just never tried. I have
practice. That's all it is.
But I'm cool. I'm cool with paying you guys.
Yeah.
$80-$100 to do that crap for me. I say crap because whatever, but it's art. I love it. I have way too much of it total. Like, I straight up have like art binders of other people's art, not mine, other people's art.
That's good.
Because I just love it, and it's like, and I get stuff that I don't see often, right? Like
Yeah.
every once in a while I'll come across a piece and I'm like when you got asked to draw, Thundarr, or that one piece from Thundarr, sorry, you're like, yeah, I'll do that, no problem. Nobody's ever been like, hey, can you draw Thundarr? And I'm like, and you're,
Yeah,
I'm making
it's true.
up
Like
there.
I love getting those requests that just like, when someone looks at my work and they go, "I bet you could do a good Hawkman." I go, "I could do a good Hawkman," because it's that same kind of like there's that Bronze Age of comics and cartoons kind of spirit to a lot of those kind of characters.
T-Man with wings.
Basically, it's Thundarr with a different
and a hat.
mace, right? Like
And a hat. Oh yeah, and a mace.
Yeah,
You got a mace.
nth metal mace. But yeah.
But no, but that's it. It's like it's the it's the cost of things. It's like it's the same reason you pay a mechanic to do like exorbitant amounts of money to do seemingly simplistic things, and then the thing is like, well, if it's so simple, why don't you go do it? Well, I can't.
Yeah.
Well, that's why you're paying me to do it.
Yeah, well, this is it. I'm not going to try to take apart my car. I don't know the hell I'm doing. I wouldn't even pretend. Like I know guys who who think I'm crazy that we take our car to the to the mechanic. But we've had the same mechanic for 20 years, and the guy's a genius. The car doesn't work, and then the car works again, and it didn't cost us that much because he's just good at what he does, and he's a decent person. You know what I mean? Like that's just like amazing.
I mean,
I'm not going to pretend to like.
Yeah. I've got a buddy of mine who does all my mechanic work. I don't think I've let anybody touch my car outside of a state inspection for 15 years plus.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Find your people, and that's it. It's worth the money.
It is. It is.
But yeah, no, that's just it, right? Like you said, they're not paying for your hours. They're not paying you an hourly rate. They're paying you for the product that took you years to hone the skill and develop to the point where you
really have a hard time with it. They have a hard
to the point where you can do something of that quality in that time. Mm-hmm. It's and you should not be punished for you refining your skills. And if unfortunately, people don't think like that, and that's on them, not you.
Sometimes we come around. Look, I admit it. Like I don't deny it. Right? Yeah, like there's a learning curve, right? You just with everything, it's gotta click in your brain, right?
Things are only worth what people are willing to pay for them. So if someone bid and it went up to $300, it was worth $300 for them. If it wasn't, they would have stopped.
That's it. Like, sometimes those auctions are a big surprise to me too. Like I put up doodles, like legit a doodle of Usagi Yojimbo, and had it go up for like 350 USD, and I'm sitting back going, "That's just crazy." But it just
Usagi.
It just hit like 3 or 4 people really hard, and they're like, "I don't care what the price is, I have to win." And there was a bidding war at the end, and it was just there was a timer on it. It would have gone all night if I just let the timer go. It honestly would have. There was 3 people that were fighting to the death over that thing, and it was amazing. Like that made me go, okay,
You should have just done 2 more and told all 3 of them, like, hey, listen, $350 each sold.
This is it. One for you. I just started doing one every day. Started doing an auction every day and just seeing what happens. And then sometimes
I would bring some of those.
$50, and sometimes they go for huge. I did a Last Ronin piece, big painting. I took 2 hours, did a really nice, like on a live show, painted it up real quick, and put another hour into it after the show to do all the highlights and make it look really good. And I put it up for auction that night. And the next day, it sold total for $1,500 by the end of the day.
Wow.
And
That sounds about right.
I never had anything go that big before in my life. I just sat back going like, "That's crazy." But again,
that's real, right?
The Last Ronin was super, super hot for a minute, and
what do you mean was? Still is.
It still is. Oh no, it's still rolling for sure. But that first series was really something electric.
It did something. It did something that I haven't seen for a long period of time.
Same
in almost any sort of media, it did something like it brought something that It just hit that sweet spot. And like you were talking about, you know, like I did a doodle of Usagi. I'm like, that's it right there. Like you hit that sweet spot. Everybody is super high on all that stuff. I'm not saying I'm not, just so we're clear. I am 100% on board with that.
Yeah.
I actually just like, if anybody watching this, you've probably seen it in the background a couple times. I got the full set of Ronin graded at Granite Con last year. I only got it back like a month and a half ago. Does that sound right, Mike?
Yeah. The Ronin stuff was a long time being processed by grading because of the weird size.
It is. No, that's exactly what it was. It was like, if I had a regular size comic, it was like I would have had it back.
Yep.
But when they finally got it entered into the system, which alone took 3 months, they were like 365 days possibly. And I was like, what?
Oh, yeah.
It was totally worth it. Like,
yep.
Totally worth it. And they came out amazing.
That's good.
Like, I even got a 9.9. I was excited about that.
Amazing. That's great. Yeah, that's rare. But those Ronin books, man, they were so well made. They were so well produced. Like I saw a few 9.9s. I even saw 110. One of my variants came out as a 10. My issue 1 variant came out as a 10. And one guy had it. I mean, it flipped on eBay for massive dollars. Weirdly, all of my covers sold out. I did a cover for issue 1. I did 2 covers. No, 1 for issue 1, 1 for issue 4, and 2 covers for issue 5. And two different retailers. And yeah, man, it was the magic.
There were so many variants.
Oh, well, the funny thing is they actually released this hardcover book here.
Yeah.
Which actually has all of the variant covers. I had one nearby because a fan actually sent it to me. And the thrilling thing for me was the fact that, because I did wraparound covers, my covers were the front and back, I really didn't expect them to give me the showcase they gave me in this book. I did 4 wraparound covers. And I would have thought they would have probably put all 4 of them on one page because of the weird sizing. But no, they gave me 4 full.
Oh, shit. That's awesome.
So, like, I'm hoping I sign 1 million of these at Granite when I'm there because this is a beautiful book. The hilarious thing about The Last Ronin is it had so many covers that this collected volume of covers is actually bigger than The Last Ronin comic itself. Like, it's actually bigger than the collected volume. There were so many covers.
That's insane.
So many.
And it's got the paper on the inside, so I'll be knocking in some nice sketches of Last Ronin for people. So, if you guys got one, bring it to the show. I'll draw on yours for free.
I'm going to have to get one,
buddy.
I'm going to have to get one. That's so cool.
I feel like I got the cover book, and then part of me is also like, I feel like I went to go buy it at Granite Con, but then got sidetracked because the CGC process was a massive.
This only has been out for a little while. It only just came out.
Okay, so that's
no.
Okay, no, I did. Somebody had like I meant to buy the actual like graphic novel of it. Then I ended up buying the graphic novel later, but I did see that the cover came out. I've looked at it a couple times.
It's beautiful. Yeah,
it is.
The guys will be at Granite too to sign that too. So
there's so many people at Granite Con again. I was like, I've been watching the names because like I've been following Granite Con for, like I said, I for years.
Oh, it's a fun show, man. So good.
It is. It's a fun show, especially when you know the people putting it on. You know how much work they've put into it over the decades at this point. Like,
Yeah, they've been really good to me. They're nice people. I've barely gotten to know them. I've barely spent any time with them, but I saw the one guy for a few minutes last year, but that was about it. They brought me my belt when I won the championship. I got to walk around all day with the belt. I handed it back to them so I wouldn't have to explain it at the border because my wife and I had to drive across.
Yeah.
You probably had to pay tax on it too.
Well, it would have been something weird. Like, where'd you get that belt? Well, I won it in a contest. What were you doing? What contest? It was at a Comic-Con. What were you doing at a Comic-Con? I was an artist there. And
how do you claim it?
The whole, like, oh, you made money at the show, and we know. Anyway,
I have an aunt. I have an aunt and uncle / grandparents who come down quite often enough to the point where they're like, we like they have to do things at certain times to make sure they go through certain border passes, which are slightly less stringent than others, and I'm like, I don't I don't ever want to go. Like it's enough to make me not want to go to Canada because I'm like, I don't know, do I have to claim stuff I'm bringing into Canada as
Sometimes
a guest?
it can be ugly, man. Yeah, I know. Like we usually just travel as tourists when we go because, yeah, explaining that you're going there to do business can be itchy. So I've barely done any American shows since about 2017 or so. I've hardly done any. It's a lot of planning to go down there. It's also our dollars don't go very far down there. Like our Canadian dollar doesn't go very far. Like it's worth about 68 cents, of your dollar. So it adds a lot to the trip, the cost.
It does.
And then if you're going down there to exhibit and to sell your books or whatever, it adds a lot to your to your risk factor for sure. So.
Right. Yeah.
There's nothing like going to the big U.S. shows. Like I used to be a regular at New York and C2E2, and they're just incredible. But there was something really special about Granite, and I think it was because it was such a focused Turtles audience.
Last year was very focused.
My wife and I are getting out of the car. We pull into the convention center, and we're getting our stuff out of the car, and there's like a whole mob of people go down to the underground parking lot where we are. Like, you're Mike Rooth, and will you sign my Ronin book tomorrow? And I'm just like, whoa, like this is like that's never. I've been doing shows for a long time, and I've never had that kind of a response. Just pulling in our car to the show.
Yeah.
It was just amazing, and then the whole weekend was like that. Everyone just treated us like we were like alien royalty. It was incredible.
No, I try to go as many years as I can. Every once in a while, I don't get to go, but last year was awesome because
Next year
it was
will be big. Like next year is the 40th anniversary of the Ninja Turtles, like in 2024, and I believe Eastman and Laird will. The idea is that Peter Laird will be there too. He hasn't been the healthiest guy lately, but the plan is that he's going to be there as well, and that would be a crazy event. Like I mean, this
it's the only way.
Anyway,
it's the only reason I would actually crack open my CGCs. I'm not gonna lie. Like if Laird showed up, I'd be like, okay, well, I guess I have to spend hundreds more dollars.
It'd be worth it.
Dear whoever's listening to this, don't yell at me later for spending hundreds of dollars on things I already did. Anyway, but no, that's it. Is like so. Eastman's gonna be like. It turns out we talk about Turtles a lot, but Eastman's gonna be at Rhode Island Comic Con, but. But the voice actors for the cartoon Turtles are all going to be there too. So I've got a couple things, like I got a Turtle van that I'm going to have the rest of them signed because I got Paulson already and I got Eastman last year. So it's a good time. The convention itself is put on by people who love this stuff.
Yeah,
and the people who go there. I personally have experienced a lot of conventions. It feels like a weird small hometown convention done in a big way.
Yeah.
And they've had a lot of really cool people come through the years, like Rob Paulson and Jim Cummings. Just to round out that year, it was also Jess Harnell.
Yep.
And Zim, I'm drawing a massive blank on his name right now, and I apologize.
It had an amazing lineup. I remember just being really impressed by it.
Yeah. So I mean, the reality is like that's it. It's a good show. It was a great show last year. I did have a lot of fun. I think I spent way too much time in the Turtles room, but that like. It's fine. It happened. It is what it is. I got to go. I went over to the other side and met, Doug Jones because he was there. So, and then ran into quite a number of people. But it is, and I'm glad you experienced what you did when you came.
Yeah.
Because if I were in your shoes, I feel like that would be something awesome for me to feel, right? Like. Somebody loving what you do so much that they're excited to meet you.
Well, and for me it was kind of cool too because it's not a huge convention, but you're there with I'm Troy Little's a good friend of ours, so like he was the other Canadian that was there at the show, so we gravitated towards each other, And he turns out he and Kevin Eastman are very good friends. So he actually was able to introduce me to Kevin Eastman, which
Nice.
for me was just such a strange and amazing thing. Like I've been such a fan for so long, and I've been at shows with him where he's been there, and he's been in the guest area. Or we've been even been in the same guest area before, but it's very rare that I ever get to talk to anybody. Or I get to meet them, and then there we are in the convention hotel lobby, checking in, and Kevin Eastman's there with his wife, and we have this amazing conversation about like drawing, Marvel covers. Like he's drawing covers for Marvel at the time, and how like the fan in him has never died. Like there he is getting nervous that he's just handed in an X-Men cover, and now he's waiting for the phone to ring, afraid an editor's going to call and tell him that he's got to make a correction to his X-Men cover that he just did. And he's like, there's an energy there that he hasn't felt since he was a youngster in the business. You know what I mean? And it was just so cool to connect with him on that level, like as another creative. And also just to be completely like fanboying out inside, screaming in my brain that I'm hanging out here having a conversation in the lobby with Kevin Eastman.
Oh,
Like,
hell yeah.
Totally cool. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
But no, so I'm glad that experience, and I'm glad you're coming back again this year.
Yeah.
Because,
it'll be fun. Looking forward to it. I got to defend my belt. I have no illusions of that I'm going to be bringing it home. I went in there with a lot of confidence last year. I wanted to just destroy Ben Bishop and just humble him. And I did, and it was wonderful. But I like Ben's amazing. Like there's no beef. He's just the coolest guy. But it was fun to bounce him around and destroy him in a sketch battle, and then to win the belt and have him come over and present the belt to me was pretty cool. But this year, I'm going to be up there against like Chris Campana and there's going to be other guys in that art panel that are going to definitely be after my gold. So we'll see.
Yeah,
but that's okay. You just got to go in with the confidence.
That's it. If they're going to beat me, it won't be easy. I'll make it challenging for them for sure.
Go for blood.
That's it.
Or robot guts, whichever one you can show on
My
TV.
winning piece last year for the contest was the final round of the sketch battle. Was we had to draw a Turtles character doing yoga. No, it was specifically Leatherhead doing yoga. So I managed to pull it off. And the cool thing was I won the contest without drawing his tail. I had forgotten his tail, and I still won. And then while they were like, everyone was cheering, I was like, "Oh shit, the tail!" I drew the tail in because we had like these 4 minutes to do these little quick, ridiculous.
Yeah.
Casey Jones doing grocery shopping, or weird random stuff, like that. So they were fun little sketch challenges for sure.
I feel like Casey Jones would own groceries, right? Because he'll put all the bags on his stick, throw it over his shoulder, and just
like a hobo.
Yeah, like any man, we have to do only one.
I don't have a
trip.
Grocery hockey stick.
No, but it's the task of taking all the groceries in from the car to the house in one trip.
Yeah.
Oh
and
no,
just doing
I get
that on the hockey stick over his shoulder just makes it easier. I'm saying
cheating.
He'll win. No, it's not.
No, it's cheating. You can't use peripherals.
No, it's not a peripheral.
You have to have like marks up your arm in like different colors.
It's Casey Jonas. It's not a peripheral. That's just an extension of his body. Okay.
All right, I'll give you that, but still.
And the Jose Canseco bat.
Cricket bat.
You gotta understand what it is.
Well,
that's so cool. So yeah,
it is.
Yeah.
So on that note, why don't you tell everybody where they can find you?
All right. Well, you can find me on Facebook under my own name, Mike Rooth. There's a few of us out there, but you'll recognize me. It's just a personal page, but I don't have my own art page on Facebook. But I'm also on Instagram and Threads and all the Blue Sky and all those things that are all the new social media stuff. But Instagram, I'm Uncouth Ruth. I'm also that on Twitter or X, whatever it's called. And also on whatever social medias. You can pretty much find me under Uncouth Ruth or just Ruth, ROOTH. MikeRooth.com is my website. You can see all my work there. Interior pages and cover work is what I mainly do. I have a shop, Big Cartel, MikeRooth.BigCartel.com, where you can get T-shirts and some original art and prints and some things like that. There'll be more stuff coming up there soon. And that's pretty much it. Yeah. I don't spend a ton of time on social media, but most of what I do print is my own work and occasional pictures of my cats. And you know,
that's okay.
That's what the internet's for, right? So,
look, we're all about
Pictures.
pets and art and weird, obscure TV shows and movies.
That's it.
That's literally our entire basis for the show. The pets were a late addition, but we're cool with it. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Mike. We had a blast.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So thank you very much.
Check him out. Check out his websites and all of the other socials, and have at it, and go buy his stuff. And if you were at Granite Con, hopefully you said hi and you didn't give him weird looks.
And paid him a commission and did not watch him while he did it for you.
Yeah, don't be creepy, guys.
Give him his privacy. Come back later, pick it up.
All right.
Thank
That's
you.
it. Thanks.
It was a good time.
Nothing stays on topic.
I'm an old windbag, man. Once you get me started on some things, like 20 minutes go by. That was your opening question. Sorry.